Euan, it's such a pleasure to have you here on the show today. I am really looking forward to talking to you about Willo. I've been looking through the product. It looks absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to hear the story of Willo from you directly. But before we get into Willo, I'd love to talk about you and learn more about your background. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be here. My background is digital marketing. So I started my career 16 years ago now. And back then I just graduated from Glasgow University and I got my first graduate job in marketing. And that was digital marketing. I was the first digital marketer in the organization that I've been hired into. And it was an organization that was heavily newspaper and radio based. So digital was like a whole new world for the organization and for me as well. So I spent, 14, 15 years in digital marketing with a number of different organizations. Over that period of time as well, I started my own digital marketing agency in 2018, which worked with a number of startups and helped them to scale. And I also, in that time, founded a car finance company, which was really online car finance. It was all about customer acquisition. So digital marketing was really fundamental to the success of that business. And then fast forward to 3 years ago, started Willo. So yeah, it's quite a short career path so far. Based in Glasgow in Scotland for all of that time, and done a lot of traveling in that time as well. And I find it really important to try and get out and see as much of the world as possible, especially being from Scotland, where it's dark and rainy, and we tend to live under the clouds for most of it. So I think it's important to get out and see other places and see the blue sky.
I'm Irish, so I fully understand what you're talking about with regard to a lack of sun. So that's really interesting. So you've really had quite a long entrepreneurial journey of multiple different ventures. Have you moved on from all of those ventures and you're exclusively on Willo now?
Yeah, good question. Exclusively on Willo now. And that was a conscious effort, Nick. I think the whole kind of learning from previous organizations and previous efforts was that without the focus, it's really hard to be successful in any of them. That obviously we talk about like spinning multiple plates and things. And I always thought that was just a cliche phrase that people threw around until I had multiple businesses at the same time. And then I realized quite quickly that you can spin multiple plates, but you can obviously drop a lot of those plates. So when I started Willo in 2020, when we took our first round of funding, that was when I wrapped up everything else and decided to go full time on Willo and get rid of all the distractions. And to give you an idea of those distractions, I spent my entire life really coming up with startup ideas. I have a whole folder of startup ideas, which has followed me around since about 2008 or something like that. And it's just a folder full of startup ideas. And that was really fun and everything, but it's not the most productive way to kind of live your life when you're constantly going from idea to idea, trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. So decided to go all in on Willo.
Okay, excellent. So with those other ventures and when you moved on, was the investment contingent upon you extricating yourself from those other ventures?
It was, but I did actually negotiate that I could do other things that I wanted, and the investors actually agreed to that, which was nice. But to the point I just mentioned a minute ago, it was actually a personal decision to focus on just one. But yeah, typically that's a really good point to talk about, Nick. Actually, is typically in your investment docs, it's going to have like an exclusivity clause or something where the founders and the directors need to be focused on one business, and they need to dedicate all of their time, a bit like an employment contract.
Is that the same then for you? You have co-founders in the business, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Is that the same for them then, that they're exclusive to the business? Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
fantastic.
Correct, yeah.
So then let's get into Willo itself. You have this folder of loads of different business ideas. Was Willo in that folder at one point, and how did it get created?
Yeah, good point. So Willo was in the folder, and it was in the folder 2014. So in 2014, I was, I'll kind of rewind. So I'm basically hiring people into organizations typically startups, scale-ups. And being dyslexic, I found that reading CVs and reading cover letters was really difficult. It was really challenging for me. It was a really inefficient way of screening people. But also from being on the other side of the fence when I was an applicant, I found that writing CVs and cover letters as a dyslexic person was really hard. It was quite inefficient. It was quite discriminatory as well, because I just knew straight off the bat that my CVs, my cover letters weren't going to be as strong as the other candidates. Because, being dyslexic, you can't structure things as well. And structure is a huge part of a CV or a cover letter. It has to follow a certain structure and tell a story in a couple of pages. So I always had a real I guess frustration with the CV and the cover letter. So I'm thinking to myself, when I'm hiring, how do I remove this inefficiency? And I started asking people for videos back in 2014. And I just said to them, in it, thanks to your application, because it was typically like an online application form, can you send me a quick video just introducing yourself and why you want to work here? And that was it. And then I just, send the email back to them. And if they were interested, they would send me a video. And if they weren't interested, they wouldn't. So that was like the first sort of filter. And then if the videos did come in, I could then watch them back, get a really good idea for who they were, and then, progress them or not progress them. But it was an amazing kind of hiring hack for me quite early on. And this is like way before a video was even, the done thing. If you cast your mind back to, use Instagram or Snapchat as a concept, they were pretty much just photos at that point. You were taking, selfies, and that was like 2014, 15, 16. And then eventually the selfie video came along. But this is like pre the selfie video. So people weren't comfortable really talking on camera. It wasn't a done thing. But it did really open up a huge amount of information for me quite early on to figure out who we should be speaking to in hiring. And it was literally just because I was putting myself in the candidate's shoes and thinking to myself, this is a really crappy way of introducing myself to a company. And then on the flip side, as an employer, I used to, hate sitting down and reading piles of CVs because I wasn't very good at it, and it took me ages. I would go through with a highlighter and just highlight bits, but that's so stupid as well, because I'm highlighting just highlights of a person. It just makes no sense. So just trying to get rid of all that. So it became an idea. 2014, I'm on holiday and I'm sitting down. I'm like, this should be an idea, a business concept should be created here. And then spent about a year kind of throwing that idea around. For some reason, I always do these ideas on holiday, I guess because it was downtime. So I would sit on my laptop or whatever and just sketch things out of it. And yeah, sketch out this it was originally a job board and a video application. So we had video job was the concept. And it was you went on this job board and it was just a job board of employers that accepted videos. You click on one and it'd take you through to video application, and then the video application would come to the employer. And we did an MVP and stuff, and it was fine, but we learned really quickly that it was first of all, building a job board is a massive undertaking. So if you look at there's almost two businesses there. There's a job board and the video piece. The job board itself is a massive thing to bite off. You've got to spend a lot of money on marketing. You've got to get all these people to your job board, but they need to be of a certain quality. Otherwise, the employers aren't going to be there for long. And you got to keep that going. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we never really thought about when it came to the job boards that we hadn't really factored in. And then the other piece was that we built an iOS app. So back then, you couldn't capture video in the browser like we're doing, now. We had to have an embedded app. So we built an iOS app that captured it through the actual camera, the front camera. But we excluded 50% of our customers or our candidates, because we didn't have an Android app. So it was destined to fail, but it was an interesting learning curve. And we learned a bunch about that idea. And that was the kind of early, the roots for Willo.
When was that?
So that was 2015. And then Willo came to fruition in 2019.
And that, you mentioned we a couple of times. Who were your early we team?
Yeah, so 2014-15 was a number of other guys in Glasgow. that I'd met up with and expressed this like idea or this concept to. And I was going to be customer number one as well. So I was like, hey guys, if we build this thing, I already have a customer, it's me, and I can start using it straight away. So yeah, it was like 3 of us, and we just built it out on like evenings and weekends and stuff.
And when did you deprecate the job board side of it and you kind of just stuck with the video side?
So we canned both at the same time, end of 2015.
Right. Okay. So that then kind of leads us on to the point of knowing that you were onto something. What was that sort of aha moment that you said, okay, we've got something really cool on our hands here?
Yeah. So this is a kind of massive learning for me. Was you can sit around all day and come up with ideas, and I had come up with obviously a whole bunch of ideas, like I said, in this stupid folder, but folders. But the kind of the aha moment for me was we had wrapped up this idea in 2015, and I'm then going, hang on a second, there's something in this, but I don't really know enough about it. So then I started investigating the space, like looking at competitors, what other people were doing in that space. And I'd quite quickly realized that, hey, if other people are doing this, there's demand. That's quite conflicting though, right? Because often when you're thinking about business concepts and ideas, and entrepreneurs are talking about like ideas, they think that they need to be the first person to market. Otherwise, there's no point going there. And like, you know, if you know, Zoom's already made video conferencing. I can't build a video conferencing app. That would be stupid because they've already done it. But that's like so flawed, obviously, because there's like 7 billion people in the world or something. It just, you're never going to reach them all, even if you try. There's plenty of space for more than one competitor. But I quite quickly realized when I was doing my research, just desk-based research, that there was a whole bunch of people in the space that we were, you know, playing in that did video interviewing. They were mostly US-based companies, and they had mostly been founded around the 2011, 12, 13 period. So it's kind of when video and webcams and stuff were starting to become quite mainstream. And yeah, I realized then that if they're there, there's space for us to be there too. There's also validation of the concept and the idea. Like some of these companies were doing quite well. They'd raised quite a lot of funding. And that was the validation that I needed to actually pursue this as a business. And that was probably the second time I'd ever done that, where I'd gone, hey, if someone else is doing it, that's the validation, we can do it too. The other validation I had for that was car financing. So the online car financing thing. I realized and actually really dug into the competitors in our space and basically looked at whatever they were doing we could do, but we could do it slightly better and we would win. And it was quite refreshing to realize that first of all, we didn't need to be the only players in the market, but second of all, you could actually benefit from them. You could learn from them and be like, you only need to be a tiny bit better and you'll win. And you can learn from all their mistakes as well. You know, if they, for example, put up like some pricing strategy and then take it away 2 weeks later, it's probably because it didn't work. So you're like, yes, that's a win for us. We'll just not use the old one. We use that new concept. And there's like loads of really cool stuff like that where it was quite obvious to me. But yeah, going, you know, back to the kind of cliche, typical entrepreneurial approach. Before that, I was always looking for uniqueness and first to market and stuff, which just isn't a thing.
So if we look at Willo today, what is that? How does it work for those who are uninitiated?
Sure. So good question. Let's start with what Willo is as a concept. So Willo is a video interviewing platform, and we enable employers to build structured interviews that they can send out to any candidate anywhere through email, text message, or job board. Candidates record their responses and then submit them for review. So typical employer is building an interview with maybe 5 questions. Those questions are presented to the candidate. Candidate answers all 5 questions, click submit, and then they go straight to the employer. And the employer reviews them in their own time. So it's like a Zoom or a Teams interview, but it's one way and it's recorded. The beauty of that is that it's totally scalable as well. So you can do multiple interviews at the same time.
And this is totally asynchronous.
Correct, yeah.
Excellent. So when people are looking for a solution to the problem of, just having CVs coming in or forms being filled out, and they're looking for an async video-based interviewing platform. When they come to you, what are the problems that they're coming to you with? And why do they end up choosing you as opposed to your competition, who you've referenced earlier on?
Sure. Okay. Big question. I'll start with the first bit. Why do they come to us, and what's the problems that they've got? So the problems that they're coming to us with typically is scale. So they need to hire, say they need to hire 40 engineers for a new project or a new product stream. To hire 40 engineers, you need to do, maybe 3 times as many interviews. And 3 times as many interviews is typically going to be, 150, 200 plus interviews. And to do that many interviews, you need to spend a lot of man time or people time on that. It's a huge amount of time. And a lot of companies that we speak to don't have that resource. So they come to us with a scale problem where, like, they need to do a lot of interviews in a short space of time. They also will typically be coming to us with the challenge of being fully remote now. So they might have, over the past few years become fully remote, or they might be working in multiple time zones. Either of those things throws up even more challenges when it comes to hiring, because you will find that, if you want to interview somebody in India and you're in the UK, either the candidate or the employer is going to be at a slight disadvantage because of the time zones. And that can be a real struggle, particularly at scale, where you end up with, a lot of people on the fringes of somebody's time zone, and it just doesn't really work very well. And then the other piece is diversity and inclusion. So that's probably the other large challenge people come to us with. So like scalability, remote, and then diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion is a really interesting one. People come to us and they're like, we're hiring, all white males, and we don't want to be doing that. But our application and hiring process just seems to make that happen, and they want to branch out. And the typical way of doing that is using something like Willo. So Willo is an amazing example of opening doors and really increasing your accessibility and your inclusion. So for example, by using a Willo interview rather than requesting a cover letter, you are opening up your job application process to people that perhaps have poor literacy skills, perhaps where, writing English isn't a strength of theirs. Perhaps they cannot travel. They might be, in a place that has poor public transport. They might be in a situation where they can't afford public transport to get to the interview, or they can't, perhaps write very well because they've got, learning difficulties, or they have some neurodiverse background that makes structuring a CV impossible. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why using an alternative to the CV in the application process is powerful. So they come to us and they will literally be opening up their candidate pool to a much wider and more diverse range of people. And you also break down a lot of those barriers in terms of geography as well, which is cool.
There's so many points there that I wanted to dive into. With regard to, let's say, the scaling part there, and you're talking about the scalability or the issue of scalability when you're trying to hire for, a load of different roles. Maybe a company has just recently received a huge investment, and now it's time to really put the fuel on the fire. When it comes to the stage of the interview that Willo works best in, is that, a screener stage? Is that a kind of a later stage, or is it actually at every stage in that hiring process?
Good question. It can be any stage. And my preferred approach, this is obviously from speaking to a lot of employers, my preferred approach for employers is to use it at the screening stage and then round 1 of interviews. So you're going to bring candidates in. The first thing that they're going to do is complete a Willo, and then you're going to shortlist those down, and then you're going to invite them to a second Willo. And typically the first Willo is going to be more broad. So it might be things like, tell me about what motivates you, why do you want to work here, what do you hope to achieve in the next 3 years, something. And that's quite broad. And then you're going to go in the first stage interview with Willo into a more deep dive. So it might be, for example, a problem solving question, like a customer comes to you and they want to cancel their plan. How would you speak to them, and how would you approach that, and resolves the issue. And you're trying to sort of narrow it down and get into a tighter approach. And then the second stage interview then potentially be what we're doing now over Zoom or something.
I see. So where do recruiters tend to leverage Willo best then in that kind of a setup?
So today, the majority of our users or our customers are putting it in the screening stage. So they're trying to take a large pool of candidates and chop that down into a manageable pool of candidates so they can progress with.
So it's the talent acquisition team inside of those companies who are going through those different screeners, and then they're kind of moving those candidates on, moving those Willows on to hiring managers for further review.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so your typical TA team for us, our typical TA team is about 5 people within an organization. So an organization with 1,000 employees plus will have a TA team of about 5, and those 5 people, just even saying those numbers out loud to you, 5 people you just know isn't enough to do all those things. So they're using it to kind of chop down, then they're passing them on to the hiring manager. Hiring managers then reviewing those Willows. They have like a kind of, a nice dashboard that they can view all the candidates on one screen as well. There's no login or anything for the hiring managers either. So we've always had this like mindset of like the hiring manager is too busy, is stressed, but needs to do hiring properly. So we kind of just try and design everything around the hiring manager. Minimal touch points, no login, easy to do on the go, but also consuming the right amount of information about each candidate so that they can make good decisions. And that's what we obviously want. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. Typically, you're going to be passing it along the chain, and then you get to second stage interview, and then it would become face to face.
That leads me nicely on to my next question, which was about your customers. You referenced different kind of end user or applicant experiences, and that made me think about who are the kinds of customers who you currently have and who you're going to be going after.
Yeah, good question. So our customer base has changed over the past 3 years, which is a good thing, I think. We started off, our real focus was SMEs. So I originally had this plan that we would be, powering the hiring process of every coffee shop, restaurant and bar and hotel on the street. And that obviously changed a lot during COVID because all of those businesses closed their doors for a short period.
Yeah.
And we quite quickly realized that, hey, bars, restaurants and hotels probably aren't the best thing to be focusing on in 2020, 2021. So we changed our approach after the first year and started focusing on mid-market. So mid-market customers and in the past year, enterprise customers. And those verticals that they're sitting in is typically healthcare. So healthcare, mostly US based, retail, and retail can kind of sort of flip into e-commerce, warehousing as well. The large part of our retail customer base is actually warehousing. And then the final one is software. So technology/software. And those 3 verticals, they've come out of, I guess, over the course of the 3 years, just analyzing our customer base and then looking at just getting the most value. So we're quite a fortunate position that we obviously every month acquire new customers, and we also churn a certain number of customers. But what we can do over the course of the year and every quarter is look at who's still with us and then use that to inform our ICP. So for example, in year 1, it was quite heavy SME, but what we also saw was that the SMEs were churning and the people that were left were mid-market, and then they were in those 3 verticals. And then year 2, we did the same, and we just narrowed it down to the point where we now can quite confidently say our ICP looks like this. But that's only just come over the years of refining and actually acquiring potentially the wrong customer and then learning that they were the wrong customer.
I see. You touched upon customer value creation. What are the customer success metrics that you use to be able to quantifiably say this customer is successful with Willo versus another customer who maybe more needs to be done to bring them up to see the real value of the platform?
Yeah. So we're really fortunate. We have one metric that underpins all metrics, and I can confidently say that is number of interviews. So number of interviews completed. So if I put it into perspective, customer that is doing 300 interviews a month is saving a couple of thousand hours of time. They're also then saving a lot of money because there's less salaries involved, but then their outcome is also better. So they're typically going to be hiring more candidates and better quality candidates in less time. And all of those things go back to the number of interviews. So we're always looking for number of interviews. Once you've completed 7 interviews on Willo, you are most likely to upgrade and start paying. So we have a 15-day free trial. In that 15-day period, we need more than 7 interviews to be received. That's when the employer gets the value, because you realize that, hey, this works. Candidates like it. We can, screen them. We can hire them. There's something in it. Any less than 7, and you've not really seen the value. So we're always trying to push that up. We have a metric as well for this year. We want to complete 1 million interviews. So we need to, it's pretty much double what we did last year. And we did about 500,000 interviews last year. We need to get to 1 million interviews this year. If we get to 1 million interviews, then everything else falls into place. Because it's obviously is tied to things like revenue as well. Customers that do a certain number of interviews pay us more because they're getting the value, and the candidates are happy, and everything else, it all filters down, which is really nice, because you can't say that about many businesses, that you can have one metric. It tends to, if you do pick one metric, it tends to be sort of squished in and kind of bastardized into a space. But we can fortunately say that it does actually work here.
Excellent. So then with regard to your customers and they're signing up, when they sign up, are they signing up to a certain amount of interviews that they get, like an allocation, or is it a monthly SaaS model? How does that work?
Sure. So it's a 15-day free trial of our mid-tier plan. So we call it our growth plan. So that allows you to do 4,000 interviews a month. And that's our ICP. So we're bringing you in on the ICP plan. You're getting, all of the features for 15 days. We want you to really maximize those features, because that's when you realize the value. So for example, we want you to add all of your TA team and a bunch of your hiring managers. We want you to do more than 7 interviews. We want you to use the branding, and we want you to get all the other good value that you get out of the platform. And then at the end of the 15-day free trial, you're then going to go either up into a more expensive plan. You're going to stay on the plan that you're on, or you're going to maybe downgrade to a slightly lower volume, lower cost plan. And that's how it kind of works. In terms of the actual business model itself, it's a subscription model. So we have monthly, we have annual, and then we have multi-year subscription agreements.
When companies are looking at you, when prospective customers are looking at Willo, and you end up edging out the competition, what are the points that you keep on hearing as to why you end up winning in those competitive cases?
Yeah. So this is interesting. It's funny, because I've been talking about it for 3 years and it's not changed. The number one thing that we win on is customer service. So if we look at the competitors, the customer service is either non-existent, which is crazy, or it's really poor. And we win on that every day because we just do good customer service. We do it live, we do it proactively. It's real people. It's actually us. It's like me, my co-founder, all the other people on the team. We all answer tickets. We all have equal responsibility to answer those tickets. We don't have a customer service person. We are all customer service people. And that is what wins number one, hands down, above everything else. And I think one of the key reasons I can cite for that is that, and we spoke about this before the call, was that what we're doing, our service and our software as a concept, is still quite new. It's not a typical commodity that customers are just buying off the shelf. It is quite a new concept. So having somebody to hold your hand and guide you through that, I think, is essential. Our customers are still early adopters, I would say. And those early adopters, they want the reassurance and the hand holding and the comfort that they're using it to the best of their abilities. And if they have any problems or questions along the way, we're like right there at the end of the phone or the email.
Excellent. You were talking about your the different members of the customer service team, and I understand that people are sharing hats.
Yeah.
who's in the team? How big is the company now, and how is it kind of split out by department?
Sure. So we have 20 people. They're all working remotely, and they all work in different time zones. So we can go like left to right. We can go from Canada, we go UK, we then go Ukraine, we go to Philippines, and there's a bunch of people in between. And that's the way we built it. It's 20 people in total. Across the business, it's quite an even split. So 40% sales, 40% product and engineering, and then kind of the rest. So it's quite a even split between sales and product, as you would probably expect in a SaaS business. But yeah, like I said, all working remotely across different time zones, and we've done that since day one. One of the reasons we did that was because we found it during COVID, so we had no choice. For example, I never met my co-founder for a year. We
Wow.
raised our round in 2020. We didn't actually meet in person that year, which is amazing, and shows a lot about the power of remote, that we can actually do all that without ever meeting face to face. But what we decided to do was continue that into our hiring philosophy and continue that into our working policies and stuff. So we, for example, have a really, really exciting work from anywhere policy. You can work from anywhere that you want to. You don't even need to tell us. If you just decide to like start working in a different country, that's okay. Doesn't make any difference. It's just wherever you do your best work. So it's kind of, the idea has been to always try and push that, because that is ultimately what we were built on. But it's also what Willo enables a lot of our employers to do, is to work remotely.
And I'm really interested in that last point about remote work. We've seen a lot of companies, now that the pandemic is easing off and is almost over in most places, a lot of companies are now saying, well, now we want you to come back. We want you to be hybrid, or in some cases, we want you to be back full time. What's your take on that sort of reverse on trend? And what do you think works best for the modern worker?
Yeah. So I could quite confidently say that we would lose a good percentage of our people if we weren't remote. And I think that's a really interesting sign of the way things have changed over the past few years. But it's also a really big warning sign for companies, I think, that want to go back. That if they go back, they're going to lose some of their really good people. We would definitely lose good people. We would also lose a lot of the focus and the drive that our people have. So, for example, one of our team members likes to go to the gym at like 4:30 because he has a class that he goes to. If we told him to go back to the office, he wouldn't be able to attend a 4:30 gym class. He would then lose out on his fitness. He'd be negged out, and he would probably look for something else, right? It's simple. I mean, it sounds simple when you say it like that, but it's quite fundamental to the way that people work and operate. And like, his whole family life and things is all geared around that. And I think that work in the future needs to be mindful of that, because work is such a significant part of a person's day and obviously of their life, that it needs to be a fair balance to try and get the most out of people. So I think that, I could confidently say to you that we would lose our best people if we weren't remote. But it's also key to, I think, the drive and the determination and the motivation of a lot of our team that we have remote. And we also have to work from anywhere policy. So to put that into another example, we have a colleague that will be going to the US for 3 weeks, but she wants to go to the US to visit her family for 3 weeks. She's going to work for a week there and then spend 2 weeks vacationing with her family. That is not possible in most organizations, because you're typically limited to 2 weeks. You wouldn't be allowed that week. So then she can go there and be there for 3 weeks. And it would just change the way that, her visit worked out, but then also her motivation towards working for Willo worked out as well. It's a big thing for us. I also personally enjoy it. I also take it, to the extreme. I was, for example, skiing last week, and rather than take it as a vacation period, I took it as a ski in the morning, work in the afternoon period. And that did a huge amount for my motivation levels, but also from a kind of team perspective, it gave us, interesting things to talk about. It gave us new challenges as well, but it also opened up a lot of interesting doors for us because I was meeting different people, I had new, experiences. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes off the back of that. And I think it's invaluable for us moving forward.
I love it. Fantastic. So let's move on now to your recent good news. You recently raised quite a bit of money. Can you talk to us a little bit about that raise, that process, and then ultimately what you intend to do with it?
Sure. So this was our third raise. We're calling it a pre-Series A. So we did a raise in 2020, 2021, and then 2022. And that most recent raise that just happened there that you're talking about was 1.5 million. And the 1.5 allows us and enables us to do two things. First of all, expand in the US. So building a team of people in the US this year and establishing ourselves as a European and North American business. And then the other string of that investment piece is product development, and product development specifically in different types of tests and assessments for candidates. So at the moment when we talk about Willo, we're typically talking about video interviewing. So asking questions and candidates responding on video or audio. But in 2023 and 4, we also want to enable Willo to ask candidates questions in different ways. For example, numeracy tests, language tests, psychometric tests, all wrapped up in the same experience, so that the employer not only gets video and audio answers for the candidate, but they can also review their literacy, numeracy skills, etc., all in the same place under one roof.
Excellent. Who is it that you raised the money from, and can you talk to us about that process? Because you raise money at a time when money isn't as cheap as it has been traditionally over the last few years.
Yeah, so you're bringing up ground I don't want to often talk about. So 2022, we started off 2022 with this idea that we would raise obviously funding. We started the year January last year. It's almost a year ago. And we started with this. I remember the board meeting quite well. It was January last year. Board meeting, we're talking about raising 7 million, 7.5, even 8 million at one point. And that all seemed really doable. It seemed quite viable. We had really good unit economics. We had low burn, cash flow positive. It was all looking really great. You basically, if you wanted to sort of write a case study on raising money, it looked like a perfect case study. Everything looked fine. And that was great. We had all the right people and things. And then, March came along. We had, YC Combinator putting out an announcement. We had, SoftBank, Sequoia, all putting out quite horrific announcements. Don't raise, extend your runway, don't invest. It was a horrible month for us, and we quite quickly scaled back our plans. So we scaled back our plans in April, reduced the total amount that we were seeking, and started asking for 3 million. So we started just going around, and I had, so to put that into some numbers, I ended up speaking to over 100 VCs last year, and they were, all being pitched with this 3 million pitch, the same kind of story. And it was a really tough year. So to kind of, when people speak about raising funding and stuff, they say that it takes over all of your life and all of your entire focus, and that you should have someone focused on it. The period that we went through last year was definitely true of that. So in previous years, it hadn't been so tough because, as you know, funding was much more readily available in 2020 and 2021. There was amazing valuations. There was a lot of cash flowing. VCs had much more sort of founder-friendly criteria and things, and it was a lot more fun raising back then. So the kind of penny really, or the coin really dropped last year when we went into that period of fundraising, and it wasn't like that. It was really tough. Every day I was speaking to a new VC, following up with VCs, answering all their questions. It was really grating and time consuming, and meant I didn't get to do anything else, which if you did that for much longer, I think you would probably quit. It was it was a horrible period of time. No, it's basically like sales every day, but nobody was buying for like 8 months. So went through that, but thankfully, by middle of last year, we had support and backing from our existing VC, 1818. So 1818 based in Guernsey in the UK, and 1818 joined the round in August, which was amazing. And that was the first of many dominoes that then followed. So we went sort of August, September, October with, the next domino following the next one, and people started to follow. And that's, I guess, one of the key learnings that I would suggest for anyone watching that wants to raise money is that you need that first investor to commit, and then everyone else typically commits off the back of that. And that was really apparent last year when, everyone was really playing their cards close to their chest. But as soon as they saw someone else going in, that was enough for them to then go in. Even though all of our unit economics and metrics looked great, they wanted that comfort and that reassurance someone else was investing first. So that was a great domino effect up to the end of last year, and that allowed us to eventually close the round in December, about a week before Christmas, led by 1818, like I said, with a bunch of other either amazing angel investors, but also syndicates and things joined the round as well. So it was a really good round for us. We added about 7 or 8 new investors, and then the other investors were all existing and follow on.
That's really interesting, and I think you gave some really good advice for founders out there who are looking to raise. With regard to what you've raised, is any of that going to be going towards hiring?
Yes, so about 50% of it will be going to the US hiring. So hiring people in the US and also people in the UK to support the US sales team.
Okay, and if anybody is watching this, yes, of course, if anybody is watching this and they are interested in applying for one of these roles, what are the kinds of roles that you're going to be hiring for, and how do they apply?
Yeah, good question. So sales and support roles, that's really what we're looking at. So typically sales, we're looking at SDRs and account execs, and then in support, it's all about success. So success managers and helping those people that start using the platform to reach that magic number of 7, and then go on to interview hundreds of candidates a month, and do that consistently every month and reach their hiring goals. Ultimately is what we're trying to help them do.
So we're coming up towards the end of our conversation together. Before the call, we talked a little bit about a special offer that you have for some qualifying companies out there. I'll pass over to you to talk a little bit more about that, Euan.
Sure. Thank you. So we've got an offer for startups. Anyone that wants to use Willo to help grow their business, grow their startup, as long as your startup is less than 3 years old, you can get 50% discount on Willo. 50% discount is, a couple of £100 or couple of $100 off a year. It's not an insignificant amount. If you go to willo.video, so WILLO.video/startups, startups is all one word. There's a small form, fill that in, you'll get a coupon sent straight across, and then you can use that straight away to redeem. And it's either for a monthly subscription or an annual subscription that you're getting 50% off. So that just really helps startups like us grow and improves their organization. And not just improves organization and grow, but improves organization and grow with the right people, which I think is really exciting, because that's particularly fundamental to the success of any startup is, grow with the right people.
Fantastic. That's a very attractive offer. Euan, thank you so much for coming on today to talk to us about Willo. It's such an interesting product. I can really clearly see the problems that you're solving for customers out there. You're clearly onto something good. You're raising money in a difficult market, and that's always a sign of a very strong company. I'm really interested to see what happens next with the international expansion and further expansion into the US. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having us today, Nick. It was really fun. I enjoyed that.